Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the basically the history of the Germanic languages. Not going to get too far in depth, but just to show their relationship to each other. So this is a very general sort of graph showing about when the different languages are tested. For Gothic, we really only have the Codex Argentius. That's the earliest thing we have, and in any Germanic language that's of any real length, it was written at about 300 something. Um, so Proto-Germanic is reconstructed to have been spoken at about this point, from, I guess that would be 500 BC on my graph to, it starts to break up around here in the 100 AD sort of area. What you then get is this sort of Northwest Germanic, which is sort of really what happens is Northwest Germanic seems to break off and have its own developments. There's supposedly let's see, I'll shift the font to something else. So traditionally, how it's divided up is you have East Germanic, West Germanic, and North Germanic. Now, so these supposedly would be their own language families that all descend from Proto-Germanic. So let's say this top one is just Germanic, we'll say. So here we have these Proto-Germanic dialects, and then they split off to West Germanic, North Germanic, East Germanic. And East Germanic languages would be Burgundian, Vandalic, and then Gothic, and possibly some other ones. North Germanic, you have Old Norse, and for West Germanic, you have Old English, Old Frisian, and well, all of their descendants. I'll just write English, Frisian, High German, Low German. And one thing that's interesting about Low German is that it should really go, here is where I should have put it, where, and then you have, let's see, you also have Dutch. And these are the main West Germanic languages. You also have Vimosaurus, which is its own language. But in any case, this isn't actually that accurate, even though it's traditionally how you would see it. Here you have Swedish, Danish, Icelandic, Norwegian, Faroese, there are a bunch of all of these, but the North Germanic languages are descended from Proto-Norse, which is descended from Proto-Norse. So let's see if Proto-Norse is on here. Yeah, it is. Proto-Norse is around here at the same time as Gothic, whereas Old Norse, as you can see, is after Gothic. And it's not attested until all the way over here. So that's a lot later than Gothic is. Let's see, if we say this is about here and that's about there, that's almost a millennium, not quite. But in any case, this isn't really, I mean, it's very hard to tell exactly, but from what I've heard, what would be a more accurate thing to draw it as is this. With, I'll try to draw it more consistently with how I drew the other one. You know what? To make sure it's consistent, I'll just copy it. Or I don't need to. I can just. So what we have then is something more like this here, and we don't have that. We just have this. So this is and here I'll put North, West Germanic. So we have Northwest Germanic, we have Gothic, and then here we have, let's say, Vandalic, Burgundian, etc. And we'll just draw like 2 more lines here. But you know, really, we can't really say much about Vandalic and Burgundian and any other like potentially East Germanic language, and as such, we can't really say that they formed a family tree with Gothic, especially considering the little we do have does not support any sort of closer connection with Gothic than the other Germanic languages. I can talk briefly about the changes we see in Gothic. For example, Wolfas becomes wolves, and you might notice that if the only change was the script, we would expect this, Wolfas, but we get wolves. And another, let's see, some other changes would be loss of E, where it merges with I. I guess I should be consistent. E merges with I. So, gosh, if I had what I'm mostly familiar with Gothic, so it takes me a second to think of a word with E, like the letter E, because it's something that's lost entirely in Gothic when it's short. Gosh. Oh well, I'll come back to that. So if we have our, so around here we have, well, Proto-Norse is distinct, but I mean, they're all like slightly distinct, I think. But here's where, around about where you get Northwest Germanic, which you get Old English, Old Frisian. I can draw a little map. Here we have something like this. So, the Anglo-Saxons coming from northern Germany and Denmark, and whereas Old Norse is spoken up here. And let's see, Frisian is here, Dutch is like here, then you have like Frankish over in, and I guess you would say Belgium is, but then it sort of just gets integrated to the Romance languages to become French. And then over here is like Old High German over here is Low Saxon. And Old High German, that's where you get Langobardic from. So they like conquer like Italy or whatever. That's the worst Italy I've ever drawn, but oh well. Basically, I should have used a real map is what I'm saying. But as you can see, Old English is attested very early. Well, I think this is based on like some like poem that's tested very early, and we can like say that it was supposedly written like a long time before. I can't remember exactly. But if we say, let's say that 1066, so that would be here. Here's 1066. This is when the Norman conquest of England happens. This is the like around about the end date of the Old English period. So we have Old English here. It's also the beginning of the Old Norse period, when we have Old Norse attested. So here's Old Norse, here's Old English. So you can't really compare Old English with Old Norse with Gothic, because these are on a very different time period where they're attested. We can't really you would not like have a Goth speaking Wolfland Gothic go to Old English person speaking the English of Alfred the Great and go to an Old Norse person from Scandinavia speaking like the Old Norse of I guess the Vikings. You would hear that because that was at the same time period, but the Vikings were not speaking the Old Norse of the Eddas or the certainly not they weren't like speaking the same language like on a day-to-day level. You can sort of say that with Old High German and Old Saxon. They are at around about the same time as Old English. So some people will think, oh, Old English, because they came from northern Germany, the people there were speaking Old Saxon, but that's not true. They were not speaking Old Saxon, they were not speaking Old English, they were not speaking Old Dutch or Old High German. What they were speaking is Proto-West Germanic or Proto-Northwest Germanic, or potentially like, oh, this is the Ingvaeonic dialect of Proto-West Germanic or something. But that you cannot reconstruct what they were speaking all that much based on looking at Old English and Old Saxon, because they're both descended from the same language, and neither one comes from the other, is what I mean to say. And let's see, what else? Oh well, I'll just get to this part now. So we have, let's see. First, I'll look at I'll look at the Gothic because it's the oldest. So we have Unter rechtes mare duhunun melian in sachtbithos refollowisidons in uns rechtins. For truly many began to write in Sacht, I'm not sure what that means, about those believed in us things. Soswe anafolhun unsis they from fromestins silva siunios ach anbachtos wesun thisvoris galik thy achmis ach min viham from anastodine allem glaguva afarlestiandin hachio thusmelian Batista Theophilo ir hunnes these ebithoi chalesits is wurde astad. And then let's see the next one. I should have written the dates down when these are written, but this is actually from 1540. So if you look at this, I actually chose a text. Let's see, 1600, 15. So about here is where I chose the text from. So this is long after Old Norse, but I just chose it anyway because Icelandic is pretty archaic. In terms of what you see there, and I don't know, it's what I could find for the same text. Next I'll look at the Old High German. Bidio vanta manere celotun ordinon saga theo or theo nuns gefulta sind rachonu so uns saltun diedar von aneginne salbon gesahun inti ambachta warun wortes was mir gesehen gefolgen temo von aneginne allem kernlicho after antre to thir skriven thu betsisto Theophile thas thu forstantes thero vorto von them du gelerit bist war. And for the Old English, for them they vitolice manige thocht und tharathinja rake in the beverdan the on us gefolde sunt swa us betachtun tha the hut of fremde gesaun und their sprache thenes wären. Mij thuchte jeornliche elum from fruman gefugdum on in de biernesse vritan the thuses selusta Theopilus that thuon knawa thara vorda soth fastness of tham the thu gelerid eort. And then I have no experience speaking Old Norse, let alone Old Icelandic, but I don't even know. This would probably be like Middle Icelandic by this point. I don't know. Even Modern Icelandic, maybe. I don't know. Af því að margir hafa stundað í lag að færa sagnir sem eru af þeim hlutum meðal vor hafa tilborið og eftir því þeir hafa oss í hendur fengið sem í upphafi hafa I'm going to guess that's pronounced sjálfir sedd og þennarar orðsins höfðu verið sunnist meir af því að ég hefi og sjálfur gjörvald numið af upphafi að ég skrifaði þeir innilega og skikkanlega til mín góði Theophili svo að þú kunnir sannan grunn þeirra orða sem þeir eru undervísuð. I'm sure I pronounced that all wrong. But in any case, you can see like that they're pretty different, but also somewhat similar. Even like basic words, like here we have with you and for and of 3. But I'll try to find so Manage. I'll put a green right there. Manage. Maybe this. I don't know. Here we have Tilotun Million. I can't really tell what word is supposed to be that, but here's another thing: rechtis versus Witolice. But yeah, it's hard to even tell which word is supposed to be which, and the different versions. Obviously, Teofili, I can look at that. I'll put a yellow thing. Goli, Batista. Okay, here's a clear example where you have the same thing. Batista versus Batista. And what is the Old English word? Celusta. So that's completely different. Where here you just have a worthy, probably related to good. And then mean. I'm going to guess that mean is very similar. Well, there's nothing there. So yeah, that's just what Icelandic accent, or the Icelandic. Let's see, what else can we say about this? Alum, alem, alem. Let's see, where is it? Maybe I missed it, but as you can see, that you have alem, alem, alum. So they are very similar. So what you would see is this like olive, and then that becomes al in Old English, because of this double L, I suppose. What you would really see in between is something like al, al. But then what we see in Old English is that this EA is actually pronounced al, al, and the L's are pronounced ol, wol, wol, and that's at the back of the mouth. So this being a front vowel, this being a back vowel, it sort of changes in tongue position to meet up with the L. Another thing we can see is umlaut, which happens in all of these languages have umlaut, but Gothic doesn't. I'll try to find some words with umlaut in them. So und Salton Diethar von Anaginne Selbon. Okay, here's this is an example of what I was talking about before, where you have Silba, but that comes from Selbas. So this E becomes I in Gothic, unless it's before an R, an H, or a Hua. And in those cases, it still merges with I, but I also becomes E. So like Sehwan comes from Se. So that's where you get Sehwan. But the thing about that example is that it would have become Sehwan even if it was Sehwan, because that's just how Gothic works. Let's see. Um, Here's an example of umlaut. As you can see, we have an I here, and that causes the A to become E. Let's see if I can find more umlaut. Oh, here's an example of Gesehan, where you can see there's an E there. So we do have to look at Proto-Germanic to be able to tell if there's an E before an H, or an AI before an H in Gothic's case. We have to look at the other Germanic languages to see if that was originally an E before an H. Here we have something interesting. So, Proto-Germanic word, we have wordung, and that becomes Gothic word. But what we see is that this A causes the preceding U to become an O in some languages. I can't remember if that's just what languages that applies to. It might be a West Germanic thing or a Northwest Germanic thing or just an Old High German thing. I'm more knowledgeable about Gothic. So word, you can see this also in wolf. Comes from wolfaz, and that A causes the U to change. We have wolf in English, so maybe it's a West Germanic thing. But that's basically all I wanted to talk about.